Hello, I am C3PO, and I believe the storyteller is ready, so let us begin.
So the episode starts off in the ruins of Garsa's sanctuary. We see that it is indeed destroyed. Boba and his team are discussing on whether or not they should set up shop there or go back to his palace. They decide to stay there. We then cut to Cad Bane and the Pikes discussing the work that they're done. We get confirmation that the Pikes killed Boba's family, his Tusken family. We see an X-Wing arrive on Tatooine, and it's R2 delivering Grogu to Peli. We then get kind of a layout of Boba's team and how they're spread out amongst Mos Espa. And then Cad Bane walks up to have a bit of a confrontation with Boba. They are about to get into a duel when Fennec pulls Boba back and tells him to let's fight on your own terms. And then they start to get a little weary as the entire town gets a little bit odd, and all of the families are no longer going to be neutral, and they decide they're going to turn on Boba and his team. So Mos Espa becomes essentially a complete loss. Cad Bane had delivered the news that he has killed Cobb Vanth, and that no reinforcements are coming. And so Boba and Din are SOL inside the sanctuary. They send out the Major Domo to do negotiations as a distraction. They fly out all Mando jetpack style, and it's really just an all-out, let's try our best to see if we can win this. It's not going so well. But then the people of Freetown arrive as reinforcements, and things start to go okay. And then two giant droideka show up, then things are not going okay. And then from this point, it's essentially Mandalorian tools and weapons trying to take down these droidekas. It's not going so well, but with a little bit of help from Santo, Grogu, who shows up on a rickshaw speeder, and the Darksaber, they're able to take down most of one droideka. And then the Rancor comes. Boba riding the Rancor to take out the last of that droideka, and then essentially the next droideka as well. We then get Cad Bane doing a final standoff with Boba Fett. There's some confrontation. Cad wins the duel, shoots Boba again, basically mocks him for going soft. And then Boba pulls out something that means a lot to him, his Gadurfi stick, the one that he made with his Tusken family, and stabs Cad Bane with it, killing Cad Bane. And ultimately, everything seems good, except for the Rancor that's on the loose, and Boba doesn't have fully tamed yet. And so who's going to have to tame it? Well, the smallest of us all, little Grogu. Grogu is able to tame the Rancor after Daddy Din fails to do so quite miserably and almost getting his head bitten off. And then the episode quickly cuts to Fennec taking out all of the heads of the Pike and the families and the mayor. And then Boba and Fennec walking the streets of Mos Espa that they've cleaned up. People are bowing to them. Everything is good. They laugh with their friends, the mods and Black Chrysanthemum. And then we cut up to space with Din and Grogu speeding away off to fight another day in Mando Season 3.
Yeah, and important also that they kind of indicate that maybe being the crime lords of this town was really not what they wanted after all, now that they in fact have it. And they kind of hint that maybe they're just going to give the role to Chrysanthemum. And I have like a little, a slight reservation about that. Maybe we want to save it for later in the conversation.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if that I didn't get that, but you're also not the only person who got that. I heard that somewhere else.
It kind of seemed like the fruit was symbolic of being in charge around these parts.
Yeah, I didn't so much see that. Fennec refused the fruit and Boba took the I don't know. I still see that as Boba's turf and he wouldn't want to abandon it. And also I'm holding out hope because that would make really this a very weird, even weirder arc than it already is.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, because ultimately
also one other thing, Cobb Vanth isn't dead. Thankfully, he's in the back tank.
Right, which you and I kind of thought anyway. Like it would have been like a really silly, disappointing death. And so when his fella from Freetown comes along and he uses the term cold blood, I was like, what the hell, man? They really killed Cobb Vanth. And so when Boba later said, I can't use my bacta tank, it's occupied right now, I was like, oh, thank God, that's got to be Cobb Vanth. And it was in the post-credit scene.
I thought it was Black Chrysanthemum until I saw him in the street, and then I clued in it was Cobb Vanth.
Yeah, because Chrysanthemum took a few hits.
I loved how indestructible he was.
He seemed down for the count a couple of times, and credit to you also, because his specific rivalry with Trandoshans was very much on display in this episode.
Yeah, don't put him in the Trandoshan district.
But just going back to the fruit thing, I think overall that this was a very good season finale, and it in many ways was quite satisfying because it was the best of both worlds. Like suddenly the long action sequences, which previously in this season have felt kind of bloated, for whatever reason, feel very satisfying now. And I think in no small part, it's Mando and Grogu are beefing it up with much more charm. But also it was just, they didn't pull any punches. It wasn't lame. Like it was really great. But because of how I interpret that fruit and the handing off, and because Boba specifically says, maybe we're not cut out for this, or he says a line that definitely indicates, like, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I was kind of like, all right, well, other than the fact that he learned how to not be a lone gunman and to have virtue and family, and also to like overthrow his old nemesis, I'm not sure there was really a point in this story if he doesn't ultimately get to be the boss of something, because that's what he wanted. And by the way, I think it's cool that he finally got to kill Cad Bane, although I kind of wish it had been, since it was so symbolic to his growth, kind of wish it had been teased a little sooner in the season. Kind of just seems like it was this like packaged thing that got stuffed in the end. He gets this really grand introduction into the series and he's killed, 45 minutes later.
Completely agree. I think that Cad Bane was revealed in an episode that had so much that you could have found a way to still put him in that exact same way. You don't need to change anything, but make the first reveal of Cad Bane occur at a different point in the season. Have it occur a little bit earlier, or maybe some really, really obvious kind of hints there as to what's to come. But there weren't really anything along those lines. And the fact that Cad Bane wasn't the one who even killed the Tusken family, like it made so much sense that it was Cad Bane when really it was the Pikes doing all that dirty work. And so the Pikes were the big bad, but at the same time, Cad Bane was the big moral bad for Boba in that certain way. I mean, I know we're not really doing kind of lines. We're jumping in deep, but there was one specifically line from Cad Bane. I think I have an idea on how to draw Boba Fett out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was one of the best lines, maybe just in terms of the way it was constructed, that I've heard in a long, long time. Not only is it, I have an idea of how to draw Boba Fett out, it's literal. It's to draw Boba Fett.
Sure.
And also to draw Boba Fett out, not this soft old man.
Yeah.
To draw the real Boba Fett out. I'm going to goad him. I'm going to bring him back to old times. And so the fact that I think I have an idea on how to draw Boba Fett out. It's just the way he even said Boba Fett too. Like it was like he was disgusted as to what he was looking at.
But again, that's only rich to the very small demographic of Star Wars fans like yourself. And like, because there was so much room earlier in the season to swap him in, they could have used some of that time to build up a little bit more context for people who are watching these characters for the first time. So many people had no idea who Cad Bane was. And so if they had established a little better that he was his old mentor, that they had a duel, that's what the ding in the helmet means, that there's like this really deep rivalry, it would have been so much more meaningful when he calls Boba Fett an old man, or when he says, I'm not a little boy anymore, those tricks won't work on me. And so like, it's very clear they have a history that was not effectively illustrated in this series, especially since the series overall was incredibly uneven. It's incredible to me that this is the same show that had the Hutt cousins give the Rancor. I get that there's Rancor payoff, and that was really awesome. But I think that was just fan service that it came from the Hutts, because like there could have been a much tidier way for everything to mean something. And while I'm talking about Hutts, just to go off on a train of thought, it occurred to me watching this episode. I know that this is a long shot, but like, what if they decided in the season finale of Book of Boba Fett to retcon the death of Jabba the Hutt? What if they decide that he hadn't been strangled to death, but he had been choked out? Because they do cut away as soon as he's killed. And like, what if he got revived and makes a comeback? I'm not saying that would have been good, but like, I was open to it considering the Hutts had been teased earlier in the season. And I never really bought that they just went away after giving Boba this sweet gift.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. And I was very disappointed that they were just kind of gone. I'm sure the characters will maybe they'll pop up in Mando season 3 as a little bit of a redemption and it would also explain as to why they were introduced here, sort of thing, because otherwise it does seem extremely out of place and weird. Bringing Jabba back would have been horrible, in my opinion. I would have hated that. Not only like there's no way that giant slug could have gotten off the sail barge, and also in multiple canon materials, Leia has become known galaxy-wide as Hutt Slayer. Gotcha. And so it's just that would have also been a little bit perturbing, but also because it's such a badass moment when she does choke him out. But I get the sense that it was like this thread that was pulled, and then you couldn't stop thinking about it, and it was purely done just so that the Rancor could be brought in at the end, and it was disappointing. And ridden, and it was a little bit disappointing that they talked about how much effort it would take to learn how to ride the Rancor. And I mean, yes, Din couldn't do it, but we didn't see Boba practice. I guess that's what we assume Boba does while Din is off with Grogu. But you could have cut back to him then for even like 2 minutes in like both of the episodes, given us another scene with Danny Trejo. I think everybody would have been okay with another Danny Trejo scene.
Well, the thing is, they really wanted you to forget that the Rancor was there. They wanted it to seem hopeless. And so they trusted that since you haven't seen the Rancor in like 3 or 4 episodes, you've probably forgotten that after after the dissolution of one of these big droidicas, we're probably out of tricks, and then ultimately you hear a roar. And plus, it allowed for them to do some cool Godzilla stuff. And like, this show is in part a real homage of genre filmmaking, and that was very prevalent in all the Western stuff. And exactly,
King Kong.
Absolutely. The maybe I'm thinking King Kong more than Godzilla, but it was monster-esque.
Oh yeah,
Boba Fett and Robert Rodriguez, like they're doing that on purpose. And in that sense, the Book of Boba Fett is kind of a love letter to old cinema. And that's cool to do that with Boba Fett, because he's kind of like an old cinema character. He's like the last of that type of mysterious hero. And so I thought it was well styled.
I would agree, but I think that there was too much going on across the season, because yes, while this episode I think was executed really well in that way, I think when you look back at the entire season, it was trying to kind of be a gangster show in the previews. It was trying to be a gangster show in the modern timeline, but in the flashback timeline, it was a morality tale and about learning lessons. And it was extremely Disney. I'm going to just say Disney in that way. But it was also very odd the way that shifted throughout the series, because then it dips into Mando. And then at this episode, I did find was a really great blend of all of those traits, the elements from those early episodes. And it works in a way, but when you look at the entire season, I don't think it works. So I think that so many of the episodes in this, and I'm not the first one to say this, but it almost makes me wonder, you called it the Mandalorian, you can't change that. Boba Fett's still a Mandalorian. It was bonkers in my mind that this was not Mandalorian season 3 after what we saw. Unless they have a clear plan already for Book of Boba Fett season 2, it doesn't make sense. You called it the Mandalorian. You didn't call it the Clone Wars the same way you had such an open-ended title for your previous show, where you did all of these kind of intermingling stories that don't necessarily have to be attached per se, but you are doing the exact same thing with The Mandalorian. And you had the opening on the fact that Boba Fett's kind of a Mandalorian, so you could get away with it. It didn't make a ton of sense as to what the purpose of this show was.
And
there are
also,
so many great little episodes, though.
Also, the Sarlacc thing and the Tusken thing and like the whole Boba backstory could have been tightened up that way if it was just treated as like a 2 or 3 episode arc of The Mandalorian. I completely agree. And I can't help but think on some level that the heavy presence of Din in the second half of this season was patchwork on some level. Like, I understand that Favreau wrote the full season, and maybe on paper it looked really good, and by and large it was pretty good, but like maybe on paper it looked better, and they got halfway through shooting these episodes and they're like, we are missing something. There is an X factor that is lacking here, and the problem is we've got 4 in the can, and so, or something. And so what we need to do probably here at the last minute is, we were going to bring in Mando and Grogu at some point, let's make them the stars. And by the way, like they really signal to that in the final shot of this season when they cut from secondary characters, Boba and Fennec, to lead characters, Mando and Grogu, who get to fly off into the sunset. Like, having been essentially the heroes and the people most on your mind. And so, while I'm sure that's not exactly how the workshopping and the breaking of a Star Wars season goes, it's going to feel, I think, to a lot of casual viewers and just people in general, like the show wasn't working, and so they had to bring in a ringer. And that is kind of what happened.
Yeah, it is interesting that Filoni was so heavily involved with that one episode, and it makes it stand out even more in retrospect that maybe it just shouldn't have been. It doesn't make sense. That one episode, it was so above and beyond. Episode was it 5 or no 6? Was it the last episode? What was the one with?
Yeah, with Luke. It was 6.
Yeah. That episode was bonkers. Like, there was so much in that episode. That was one of the best episodes of Star Wars TV. I know I talked about I wanted one of these episodes to be in my top 10. Yeah, that one probably is in my that one's in my top 5 easily. No, it is because I can watch it as just a piece of Star Wars. I'm trying, and that's the thing. I get way more enjoyment out of this show than most people would because it's just a piece of Star Wars. I'm trying to kind of objectively critique the fact that I think there's some sloppy construction, but the contents are all quite solid, and in some of the cases, absolutely incredible. But it does really have a lot of consistency issues, and it doesn't make a tidy present. It seems like it was wrapped with really great wrapping paper, but they ran out of wrapping paper and had to switch to a different kind midway through.
Well, and just to go back to Cad Bane for a second, and this builds off what we're talking about in terms of the evenness of the season and how they could have teased him a little bit better, because there's this idea that these two have a history, and maybe in the past they had a sort of kinship, even if it was like not exactly on the level, but they had less beef in the past than they do now. There's obviously like a really strong tradition in Star Wars of meeting up with your foe who was once your friend and having to kill him. Like that's the climax of the original Star Wars movie. And for that to mirror in this context, which is very different from Anakin and Obi-Wan, is still very useful, but they don't have the backstory built. And so that's kind of too bad. On the Rancor, is it fair to say that this Rancor is way, way, way bigger than the one we see in Return of the Jedi?
I don't think so. I think it looked about the same size to me.
It just doesn't seem to me like a big door could crush this guy. He just seems like way bigger.
I don't know if it's a hydraulic door.
Maybe.
It seems possible, but yeah, maybe. What does? Well, no, he goes to sleep at the end. I was gonna say, what takes him out in the end? He doesn't. He goes to sleep. But kind of going.
By the way, that like
so
Grogu cuddles in for a nap is so hilarious and weird.
Oh, but it's so adorable too. I mean, it's almost like he was about to suck his thumb. He just looks so cute. But back to kind of Cad Bane. It's actually I'd like to further defend people who aren't as obsessed with Star Wars as me in the fact that not only is this backstory not known to everybody who didn't watch the Clone Wars. This backstory isn't even in the finished Clone Wars. This is from the unfinished episodes of the Clone Wars that you can only access through going to conventions or finding clips of that on YouTube.
Big off. That's bad storytelling then.
Yeah. And so you really, really missed a massive opportunity with all the flashbacks you're doing. Yes. All these flashbacks you're doing to kid Boba. Oh my God, we can't get somebody who looks just like a young Daniel Logan. Oh, wait a minute. He's wearing a fucking helmet. You can absolutely do whatever you goddamn need to make it work. They had
all the pieces to make this work fine.
Yeah. And you can just do some flashbacks to even that time period so that you're kind of hinting around it a little bit and to showing even some of maybe the jobs. So kind of the point that Cad Bane had was he wanted to train Boba Fett up because he never got to kill Jango Fett. Oh. And so Jango Fett was known to be the best bounty hunter in the galaxy, but Cad Bane believed himself to be. And right. Cad Bane in the end was, because he really outlived Jango by a good margin, and Boba beat him not by being a bounty hunter, by being a Tusken. Yeah. And so in that regard, Cad Bane does win as the best bounty hunter the galaxy's ever seen, at least in that regard. And so he will go down as the victor there, but he wanted to train Boba up and then kill Boba because he wanted to be able to get the pride from that. And so he leaves the dent in Boba's helmet. And Boba leaves a mark on him as well. He's got a metal patch in his head. Right. But there's no reason you can't do subtle nods to that or even just direct flashes to that in some of those early episodes, as opposed to having the shots of him getting out of the bed and like putting his hand on the window as the Slave One flies away. Right. That doesn't tie the line enough for people.
Right. Wild, by the way, that there was only one episode with Slave One in the entire TV series about Book of Boba Fett.
Where it was really prominently featured. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're totally right. That's a great point. It does seem odd.
You feel satisfied with this as Cad Bane's death, knowing the character ahead of time? Yeah, it's good.
Yes.
I mean, it is good.
Yeah, it totally works. I've always assumed Boba Fett killed him until he made his return in the Bad Batch, so that we know he survived. And so beyond that point, I've just still in my head assumed that Boba Fett's still going to one day get the opportunity to kill him. And so that worked for me completely. And it also means that we now have an extra 30 some odd years, 33 years or something, 34 years of Cad Bane doing cool shit in the galaxy that we can canonize now. So that's great. It doesn't matter to me that he died as a really old man here. He is so old. He is like over 100 years old, probably.
I know. And for him to look at Boba and say, you're going soft in your old age, which by the way, is a really good exchange. Cause then Boba says, we all do. It's a good moment. Okay. Let's talk about Grogu, the little green man. Didn't really expect to see him again this season. Couldn't have been happier than to see him. Did you indicate in your recap that R2 was piloting the X-Wing? Because I may have been a fool who thought it was actually Grogu who was flying an X-Wing fighter.
Oh, really? Oh, because actually that's funny. So it was definitely R2, but even Pelly has a line in
the cockpit and Pelly kind of like says something. Did you fly this thing all by yourself or something? And so I don't know.
She did say that, but what I wrote down as the funny line was the line she says to one of the pit droids after, I know an astromech flew the ship. She says that directly to, and it's just funny the way that she delivers it too. But yeah, no, R2 was flying.
I mean, we both predicted last week that we thought Grogu would pick Mando over the Jedi. I really didn't think that I really didn't think that wouldn't be drawn out. Like that would happen off screen. And like, I assume there's going to be some other kind of Jedi connection. He doesn't just get to go on being a Mandalorian with a tremendous amount of force power. But then again, they're not going to want to bring Luke Skywalker in all the friggin' time either. I don't know. There's going to be more story to tell there, but like to see him wearing the chainmail and Mando says you're wearing the shirt and the leap hug when he
my God
on the speeder and he just like lunges at Mando and they're like, oh, I'm happy to see you too. In a moment of otherwise panic is just like fills your heart with so much warmth.
Oh, it was so joyful to see him jump like a little frog up into his arms, and he's just so excited. And the babbling that he does, oh, I'm happy to see you too, buddy. But yeah, it's a really sweet moment. Grogu stole the show, and like I love me some Grogu, obviously, but Grogu I really thought stole this episode with the Rancor move and just the absolute cuteness of the cuddle up next to him and the jumping into Din's arms.
When he like walks out into the street in his little
yeah, and does his little like concentrate movement and like raises his hand. And he does a great job taking down one of those awesome droideka droids. Do you want to talk with them? Those were great.
Oh man,
those were amazing. They're called Scorpionic droids, and they were from I think they appeared maybe in some small or very few Legends content, but they're initially from concept art from the prequels.
They really, and we use this metaphor quite a bit, but they really gave me a dungeon boss vibe in a video game. Like, especially when like Mando goes around back to hit them on their weak spot, and then they turn around, and then you got to go hit them on their weak spot as many times as you can,
and then hit them in the eye,
to finally work them out. So there was definitely. Yeah, once you get their shields down, hit them in the eye. Like that just really felt like video game. And, it didn't last too long for me. It went on for a while, but I never stopped being quite entertained. And then when Grogu just like crushes one with his mind, takes a while, takes a lot of concentration, but he's able to just kind of shred it with his powers. And that was so satisfying.
I like the fact that he specifically like pulled out a bolt. Like there was one, he's just like, just flew right to him, and then everything goes to shit from there. And then the Rancor dusts off the final pieces. But yeah, Din really at a couple moments is letting Grogu do his thing. And that's the thing I think that could be more interesting about the way that their relationship develops, is if Grogu has picked up enough from his Jedi training with Luke that he's able to seemingly defend himself. Maybe he doesn't get quite as tired. Maybe he's able to do more. And I do think that he will live the Mandalorian way with these Jedi powers. I think that's very like Ahsoka's not really following the Jedi way per se. And there are enough Force users roaming around the galaxy. I think he's going to maybe one day find a Jedi whom he can kind of connect with a little bit more and maybe learn some deeper meanings of the Force with.
I mean, that could be Rey, right? Like way in the future, it could absolutely be. Rey does not follow the traditional Force path.
It could be Rey or 50 or 100 years after Rey. And that's the benefit of Grogu, is we have so much time with him. But I would absolutely 100% put a confident $20 on Rey and Grogu being on screen together in the next 15 years. It will absolutely happen. And yeah, it would make a ton of sense for Grogu's actual next Jedi Master to be Rey after both of their first Jedi Master being Luke. So I think that would be kind of cool.
Well, and Rey is also a Skywalker, and so they're all kind of part of the same little family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, really nice. I guess I don't have a whole lot more thoughts about it. Do we think that Flashdance is dead when her bar got blown up?
Oh yeah, I think she's definitely dead.
Yeah.
I do want to say I have some take backs. Man, those mods, they bugged me more this episode than anyone else. The Power Rangers, the acting was so atrocious from Sophie Thatcher. Is that her name?
She gives me a real Ali Sheedy in the Breakfast Club vibe, and not in a good way, because I wouldn't want Ali Sheedy in the Breakfast Club within I don't know how many parsecs of Star Wars, because like it's just a very bad fit. That she's like wearing clothes from Hot Topic. It's such a bad fit.
Yeah, it does not look right. And same with the other guy. Their British accents are wrong. If you're from Tatooine, if you're like so righteous, self-righteous about being from Tatooine, first of all, you shouldn't rip people off and steal from them. And also you shouldn't have a British accent, because no one else does from Tatooine. No one ever has. And so it does not make any sense. That's trying too hard to incorporate other elements of Star Wars into Tatooine when Tatooine is going to feel like the reason they're there is to add like a little color to Tatooine. Sorry, Tatooine doesn't have color. That's the point of going to different planets in Star Wars, so that you don't get bored being on just Tatooine. And that is the problem with having a completely grounded show for what is was it 5 of the 7 or 6 of the 5 of the 7 episodes. And so that is something that I think Star Wars can maybe learn a little bit from on in that area, because I don't think I would hate these characters as much if they weren't on Tatooine. But I do think some of the dialogue that they have was pretty shitty in the beginning of the episode, and in the I grew up around here, and the fighting with the Freetown people.
I think you're onto something in the idea that if they had been from somewhere else, they wouldn't be as irritating, because they wouldn't stand out as so wrong. Like maybe it wouldn't even occur to me that they're kind of out of place if they were a street gang from Coruscant, because of like how advanced they'd look. I still don't think I'd be like a great fan of them, because as you said, the acting's not great and the dialogue's really not that great. And also they really have no influence on the story. They're just bodies because our people needed more allies and they forgot to develop some more in. At one point, clearly they're kind of toxic because they turn other characters bad. At one point, Fennec says to, I guess it's Sophie Thatcher, ooh, manners, I like it. And I cringed so hard. It was brutal.
Yeah, that was a bad one. Absolutely. But that was pretty much everything. And that's the thing. Even after a badass moment from Fennec, it was still annoying because they were the kind of the recipients of the saving. But there was some good lines in the episode. There were some great ones from Cad and Pelly. I'll go through some of those. I think I have an idea on how to draw Boba Fett out. If that's not the quack calling the Stifling slimy again, I was happy to have that one return. I liked that one. I thought that was a good Star Wars one, especially after Boba used it last time.
Yeah.
And the way Cad says, "You mean the one that massacred your Tuscan family and blamed it on a speed bike gang?" Like, just it was so old school. I'm just goading you in the most Western way. It was excellent.
Great time.
Yeah, the what's your angle as well, like not believing that you're this, like, this is not who you are, Boba. You gave it a shot. You tried to go straight, but you've got your father's blood pumping through your veins. You're a killer.
Yeah.
Now's about time you jet off to your Bacta tank. Consider this my final lesson. Look out for yourself. Anything else is weakness.
How did you know that he's been spending so much time in this Bacta tank? He seems to like have an inside scoop on what Boba's been doing for Reha. Has he been spying on Boba?
I think he has been. He knew about Cobb Vanth having his armor, and so it seems like he's been doing some recon on Boba. He's got a little obsessed there.
Yeah.
But Pelly, a couple lines from her. Whoa, Grogu, that's a terrible name. I thought that was funny.
She's really out of her element here. I've grown to like the character quite a bit, but like she's really in over her head in this action sequence in a way that's like amusing, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that she's grown on me so much. I've really enjoyed her appearances in this season.
Me too.
Or in this TV show, because this is not another season of The Mandalorian. Well, look at you all fancy talking about Grogu's chainmail.
Yeah.
I did like when Boba and Din had the exchange of, "You sure you want to stay? This is the way." Din just kind of resigned to whatever ridiculous allegiance he has to, "This is the way," and those who wear that armor. And so he's willing to die for it. I guess he didn't realize that Grogu was so close by, or maybe he wouldn't have made such a brash decision. But
pretty anticlimactic ending for the mayor, who was perceived to be this like really daunting big bad in the first half of the season. I know we've complained a lot about the unevenness of this season, but for the first 3 episodes, we didn't even get to see the mayor. And it was we were led to believe that he was like a really big threat and cool design, but we only saw him in 2 scenes in the whole season. And he ended up being kind of a wimp. Although he gets killed in a pretty brutal manner.
He gets killed in a very cool way.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed because I thought the character was extremely menacing.
Yeah.
And was just portrayed by Robert Rodriguez in a really, really excellent way. And he's not even an actor.
Right.
And so I was disappointed because the character then kind of got neutered a little bit as being not so cutthroat after all. And then getting his throat strung up or cut.
Who directed this episode?
This one was Robert Rodriguez.
Okay, good. I don't have any more thoughts on this. I don't know if you have any trivia that I won't know the answers to.
I do. I have some trivia.
Okay.
Can you name one of the mods?
It was like Shab or Shard or Stink.
Drash, and Scad are the two main
Scad. I was
mods.
kind of close with Scad. I knew it was just dumb, like noises, grunt noises.
I was also happy the bartender got named. His name is Tonti.
Okay.
Which that was a gripe I have about The Mandalorian in general, just the number of characters in that show that don't have names.
Right.
And so I was happy that he got a name and that they're not going to, that doesn't seem to be a new thing that they're doing in Star Wars. It seems like they're starting to fill in those blanks. So I'm happy about that.
Yes.
What schooling and on which planet did the mayor's major domo attend?
I think he said from Coruscant because he indicated that like he's like, I'm not trying to brag. I don't remember what he was schooled in, although I guess the point of that monologue is I'm really good with negotiation tactics. So it was
finishing school is what it was specifically, but yeah, okay. Finishing school, finishing academy on Coruscant.
Yeah. Gotcha. I hope we don't see any more of him, by the way. I don't know where we would. There's no need to have him anymore. He doesn't work for anybody. He's not a threat, as he said. Let's just get rid of him.
Yeah, he's an annoying character. Did not fit in the series and was very unnecessary.
Yeah.
And where does Fennec kill the Pike and family leaders?
You mean in that final scene when she assassinates everybody? I don't know. I just figured it was somebody's office.
Well, you got one of the words right. It was the Mos Eisley Desert Survey Office.
Okay. All right. I would not have gotten that.
Yeah, the Major Domo says specifically, the Mos Eisley Desert Survey Office, to be specific, or whatever he says, and after being taunted. But yeah.
I thought that was a good moment because there was so much going on that it was easy to forget that Fennec was nowhere to be seen. And so, in fact, she had been like on her own, like taken out the executives. Like on her
being
own
an assassin.
Yeah, like that was really quite perfect for her.
Yeah, overall, it was a good season of Star Wars television. It was enjoyable in that regard, but it was a weird execution of the concept of the Book of Boba Fett. So it was.
I won't soon rewatch the first 4 episodes of this season. Someday, but like ahead of Mando season 3, I'll probably rewatch the most recent 3 episodes, but I'm not in any hurry to rewatch the Boba Tusken origin story again.
Yeah, I would agree. It's good, but it's not necessarily the most rewatchable. It's right there. And I was kind of thinking about this today. The highs of this season or series were right up there with some of the highs of Mando. Yeah. But the lows were right there with some of the lows in Solo. And so it was a real range, and that just is very weird to process, but not a bad thing. When I look at the way that the Clone Wars was constructed, that has a lot more than 7 episodes. But when you look at the whole mixed bag of it, there are some things in it that are the worst things in canon, and then there are some things in it that are like right at the bloody tip top. And so it's you just have to take the good with the bad and enjoy the good. And overall, like there wasn't really bad in it. It was just parts that were not as like edge of your seat enjoyable as maybe The Mandalorian tends to be around Christmas time.
Now, this is just the first new Star Wars of 2022. We do not have to wait that long before there's more, which leads us nicely to probably the biggest bit of Star Wars news this week.
Yes, that would be the fact on May 25th, we are getting Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we have the poster for it.
Yes, we do.
And so interestingly, I have not looked into anything anybody has said about this, but Did anything stand out to you on it? There's one thing that stands out to me, I think.
I don't know about the design, although I'm curious to hear about this. I assume you know that it's being released on the 45th anniversary of Star Wars, the original movie.
Yes, on May 25th. Yes.
Already some people complaining about it not being May the 4th, but it's actually a more significant date than that, which is really, really nice. I mean, I'd say it's one of those very minimal posters. It's a wide shot. It's quite far back, and you see partially robed Obi-Wan, Ewan, of course, walking through a very like barren wasteland on Tatooine. He looks more like, I mean, not just because he's played by the same actor, but he looks more like Revenge of the Sith Obi-Wan than A New Hope Obi-Wan. He still has some brown in his hair color. I don't know if your question has anything to do with that iconic Phantom Menace poster, which is also like similarly balanced in terms of one character in the sand.
No, it's not what I was getting at, but I wonder if the shadow is anything interesting. Doesn't appear to be. The thing that stands out to me, and I could be wrong because it's so small, is that he's holding a lightsaber.
Yes.
And
he's holding a turned off lightsaber.
Yes, and it very much appears like he is holding Anakin's lightsaber.
Oh,
not his own.
I wouldn't have.
So
that makes sense.
It's the shape of the Graflex that is not the shape of his lightsaber. Okay. And you zoom in, and it's even more clearly the shape of the Graflex and not the shape of his lightsaber. So that is he bearing a gift for his old friend? Is he going to try and coax him back with the saber that he built as a Jedi? Is he going to fight Anakin with his own saber? Is Anakin going to have to fight against that saber again, the same way that he fought against Luke in Empire?
That could be cool.
That could be very cool, especially seeing as Obi-Wan wielding it.
That is for sure not an accident, so you might be onto something there, but I'm not so sure that this is like a still from the show. In fact, we know that it's not. It's artwork meant to tease the show and create, generate exactly this kind of conversation. But just contextually, I think that this is Obi-Wan walking into his new existence as a loner. I think that this is not just like him going out for bread. I think that this is him getting to Tatooine. If I apply some kind of story to the image I'm looking at, I think this is him just getting here. And so in a sense, he walked away from Mustafar with that lightsaber in his hand. I'm not saying this is, like 20 minutes after that. I'm just saying like this is our opportunity to see what happens essentially after that moment, after we left that version of the character. And so this is him walking, on the same path, with the same things in his hands, the same tools at his disposal.
That's really interesting. It definitely age-wise aligns with kind of that mindset too, in the sense he doesn't look too much older. I kind of view it a little bit more as that he's lost there. He's kind of just lost in the desert and sort of lost in what he's supposed to do. And he's not the one who gets to raise Luke. He's somebody who's just supposed to be there from a distance. My guess is he's going to be rejected by, it wouldn't surprise me if he tries to be in Luke's life and we see him actively being rejected from Luke's life.
Yeah, possible.
And
you think Lars will be like, no, don't come around here, you old wizard?
Yeah, you crazy old wizard.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that you're just going to bring danger wherever you come. And
that makes sense, actually.
It wouldn't surprise me if like Obi-Wan has to beat somebody up and Owen sees it in town, or Beru sees it in town, and it's just like it's extra reason not for like to like, oh, we got to keep him away, and like who knows. But it's also a matter of the premise of this show, everything that they're talking about, everything that they lay down, is that it's about him battling with his greatest failure in failing Anakin. Yeah. And so that also kind of aligns with him being lost. But now I'm also looking at the poster one more time, and I see specifically that they choose his lightsaber for the eye in Kenobi. So they made sure to get that right as well. That is the Obi-Wan lightsaber design. But as they're looking again, it's definitely the Graflex in the sand.
I'm also noticing there is very decisively only one sun in this Tatooine horizon. Now there are a lot of clouds.
That's not true. There are two. there's one right behind him, and then there's one like right next to that, right behind it. It's just one of them setting.
Oh, I guess. Well, okay.
There's
obviously an easy metaphor to play with in the dual sunset and the duality between Anakin and Obi-Wan, or like the fact that there's two sons and only one Obi-Wan here living by himself in the cave is interesting juxtaposition symbolically.
Well, let's go on that a little bit more. One of the suns is half set. One of them is still fully out. One of them is still light. One of them still has a little light left.
Oh, I love it. That's really nice.
Will he get to it before the sun sets, or will the sun set?
Wow, beautiful. I mean, this series is going to be a tragedy because
yes.
We know that it's not going to result in either he or Anakin dying, but we know he's not successful. We know by the time we pick up with the character again, Vader is more evil than ever.
And the way I look, is still one of my favorite moments in Star Wars is one of the most tragic ones. It's the "you are my brother, Anakin." So I'm expecting, and I can't expect kind of an elongation of that, but you kind of like, it is going to be in a bit of an expansion. I'm sure there will be some connections to those moments around that specific point. There will be direct tie-ins to that duel. There has to be. And so I cannot wait. But yeah, those are the gut-wrenching moments. And so it'll be a weird kind of nostalgia grab. Whereas when you see Luke Skywalker, you get all excited to see he's going to train Grogu. And this will be a totally different. This will be pure just gut punch, gut punch, gut punch.
I'm so excited for Hayden Christensen too, man. I think that he is, and I haven't seen the show. I have no reason to have this much faith in it, but I choose to. And I think that because, the bar is low for reasons that aren't worth discussing, people are going to be so pleasantly surprised by what he's capable of in the right hands. And I think that the acting could be really, the dynamic between the two of them could be really emotional and incredible. And I can't wait to see what they do.
Yeah. And on top of that, we talked about it briefly last week after the podcast. I had seen a clip on YouTube of an extended practice run of the fight scene between Anakin and Obi-Wan, but it was Hayden Christensen and Nick Gillard, who is the stunt choreographer and fight choreographer for Star Wars. And so it was Nick Gillard playing the role of Obi-Wan and Hayden Christensen doing his Anakin parts. But it was a different fight. It was a faster and more intense fight. And it was insane. And it just shows you how athletic Hayden Christensen is and how incredible he is with a lightsaber. Nice. And I think for that reason, and for so many other, I imagine we're going to, I hope we have him in the Darth Vader suit during the fight. Shoot it in a way that makes him look bigger, because you need to make him bigger. But I don't care. Hayden Christensen has fought like Anakin, and he fought like Anakin. He learned how to fight in a way that would resemble the way Darth Vader would fight as a cyborg too. And so it's just he knows that part of the character so well, the physicality. And it reminds me of the way that Adam Driver has such command over Kylo Ren's physicality, and the fact that we praise him for that. But Anakin did the exact same thing. He would just had to adhere to the physicality of David Prowse playing a cyborg from the 70s as a heartthrob 20-year-old. And I'm sorry, that's a lot harder than creating your own new character. Right. And so I think he deserves to be applauded. And so, like you said, can't wait for him to get that kind of potential redemption arc.
That's obviously the big one, is the Obi-Wan announcement, which is now like official. What else? Anything else going on?
Not too much, but another big piece of news, and that is that Andor is getting a season 2, and that it is going to be filming soon, later this year. I think it's going to be filming season 2, and there's also heavy rumor or leak or reveal or non-announcement, but through the grapevine, it appears that it is a fully determined arc, and that it is going to be a 3-season series.
Great.
And I think that's awesome. I like that they have that planned ahead.
Yep. That sounds really good. I think I heard that too. Good. We good for birthdays?
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy birthday on Thursday, February 10th to Laura Dern. And on Sunday, speaking of Anakin, happy birthday on February 13th to Pernilla August, Shmi Skywalker. Did we see her come back? Which did I have a fever dream where she like got a cameo in some kind of Star Wars thing, or what am I thinking?
No, you're thinking of the Mortis arc. She's, remember?
Yeah, that's right. Right. They
Yeah,
so they actually got her voice in there to play Shmi in a
Yeah, or
flashback.
the
I wonder if they'll be able to
sons.
use that for Obi-Wan Kenobi. I could see it. There's context for that.
Yeah, there's context for it. I mean, I like Obi-Wan never met Shmi, so that wouldn't help.
No, but Anakin's gonna be in the show.
Oh yeah, and in terms of all the flashback that he has, yeah, that would be awesome. That'd be really awesome.
That'd be really awesome. Okay, well, if you want to send us any of your thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett, obviously we've got many of them. All of us do. You can email us, recorder66podcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at recorder66. If you're listening to the Recorder 66 podcast, be sure to rate and review on whatever app you use. If you're joining us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Coming up in the podcast, we are going to do a top 6 episode where we just break down all the things that we liked most about the Book of Boba Fett, because it turns out this episode we actually griped a lot. Do you find that we actually had a lot of criticisms overall as we talked about the season?
Yeah, I think it was more a criticism on not necessarily execution, but planning. And so I'm far more okay to criticize planning, especially when I think the execution was good. I just think that the planning mixed with the execution made for a very weird expectation and a muddled product that was very enjoyable, but one that doesn't stand well on the shelf on its own.
Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts. More Recorder 66 on the way very soon. And until we are together again,
may the Force be with you.